A single hug in a small diner changes everything for a grieving father and his daughter, unlocking hope, love, and a life they never imagined. Lucas Harrington, a billionaire businessman, had always been known for his sharp mind, endless energy, and impressive ability to close deals that most people would consider impossible. But today, sitting in the driver's seat of his sleek black SUV, he felt unusually tired. Not just physically tired from early meetings and long hours in the office, but a deep, bone-weary kind of exhaustion that only came from balancing a demanding career with raising a young daughter on his own. Since the tragic loss of his wife 2 years ago, Lucas had tried his best to fill both parental roles, but he knew that no matter how hard he tried, there were moments he couldn't replace. Moments like today. Mia, his 6-year-old daughter, sat quietly in the back seat staring out the window with a small stuffed bunny clutched tightly in her hands. She had inherited her mother's dark, curious eyes, which seemed to notice everything around her. Lucas watched her out of the corner of his eye, a pang of guilt hitting him when he realized she had hardly spoken a word since they left the house that morning. He knew she missed her mother, and despite his best efforts, he sometimes struggled to give her the comfort and attention she needed. Business calls and urgent emails often stole him away when she wanted to share a simple story or ask a question. Today, he had promised himself he would take time for her. Even if it meant stepping away from the endless demands of his job for a few hours, he decided to take her to a small, family-owned diner he had stumbled upon months ago. It was nothing like the high-end restaurants he usually frequented. The place was simple, cozy, with red checkered tablecloths and a faint smell of fresh coffee and warm bread that instantly reminded him of childhood mornings with his own parents. He parked the SUV and helped Mia climb out, holding her small hand as she skipped happily toward the entrance. He noticed that she seemed more animated today, her tiny feet tapping against the pavement as she hurried to see the world outside their car. Inside, the diner was quiet for a weekday morning. A few regulars sat at the counter, sipping coffee and reading newspapers, while a couple of elderly women chatted softly in a corner booth. The atmosphere was calm, a stark contrast to the hectic energy of Lucas's office or the constant noise of the city streets outside. Mia immediately ran ahead, her eyes lighting up at the sight of a small mural of farm animals painted on the wall. She pointed excitedly, trying to name each one, and Lucas smiled, feeling a rare sense of ease. It was a simple moment, but it was exactly what he wanted for her, a chance to just be a child, to laugh and explore without the weight of loss pressing down on her. Lucas slid into a booth near the window, pulling out his phone to check a few urgent messages. He knew he was supposed to be off duty for the morning, but old habits die hard. His eyes scanned emails about a merger deal, but his attention kept drifting to Mia. She wandered over to the counter, curious about the diner's setup, her small fingers brushing against the shiny syrup dispensers and sugar jars. Lucas noticed a young woman behind the counter who was watching Mia with a gentle smile. Her name tag read Emily. She was in her mid, with dark hair pulled back in a messy bun and kind eyes that seemed to immediately put Mia at ease. Mia struggled for a moment to reach a napkin dispenser that was slightly out of her height range. Lucas, absorbed in his phone, didn't notice until Emily knelt down and offered her a hand. "Here, let me help you," she said softly. Mia looked up at her with wide eyes and nodded eagerly, accepting the small gesture. Emily adjusted the dispenser so Mia could grab a napkin herself, then handed it to her with a warm smile. Something about the interaction made Lucas pause. He rarely saw strangers show such unprompted kindness, especially in the world he inhabited, where money and status often replaced genuine warmth. Mia giggled, a sound that made Lucas's heart swell. It had been months since he had heard her laugh so freely. He watched as she returned to her booth, napkin in hand, her little face glowing with happiness. Emily went back to her duties behind the counter, but Lucas noticed the way she glanced at Mia every few moments, as if silently checking that she was okay. He realized then how much he had missed seeing Mia interact with people outside their family circle. She needed more than just his presence. She needed connection, attention, and care from others who could offer it freely. As he sat there, Lucas felt a strange mix of emotions. Pride, because Mia was growing into a bright and curious little girl. Guilt, because he knew he could not always be the source of all her comfort. And relief, because he realized that not everyone in the world was busy or indifferent. Some people, like Emily, had the ability to offer warmth and understanding without expecting anything in return. For the first time in a long while, Lucas allowed himself to just watch and appreciate the simplicity of the moment, the quiet din of the diner, the soft chatter of other patrons, the smell of freshly brewed coffee, and the sound of Mia's laughter echoing gently off the walls. Time seemed to slow down, a rare reprieve from the chaos of his usual life. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease ever so slightly. He knew the day was far from over, that meetings, calls, and responsibilities awaited him outside these walls. But for now, he let himself be fully present, fully attentive to his daughter's joy and the small, genuine acts of kindness happening right in front of him. It was in this quiet, ordinary moment that Lucas sensed a shift beginning, though he could not yet name it, a sense that today might be different, that something important was about to unfold, and that this small diner, This simple gesture could change their lives in ways he hadn't expected. Mia, oblivious to the swirling thoughts of her father, skipped back to the booth, humming a tune she had made up herself. Lucas watched her, feeling a mixture of admiration and melancholy. He wished his wife could see her daughter now, wished she could see how resilient and bright Mia had become. But even in her absence, Lucas felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps life still had a way of offering unexpected comfort, even when grief and responsibility weighed heavily. And as he glanced once more at Emily, who had returned to her station with a quiet attentiveness, Lucas felt a stirring in his chest, a hint that maybe, just maybe, they were about to encounter someone who could touch their lives in a way he had not thought possible. The morning continued, simple and unremarkable to anyone else. But for Lucas and Mia, it was a moment of connection, a pause in their busy, complicated lives. Little did Lucas know that this ordinary day in a small diner, surrounded by the smell of coffee and the warmth of genuine human kindness, would soon mark the beginning of a shift in their lives that neither he nor Mia could have predicted. Mia had been exploring the diner with curious little steps, her eyes wide as she took in every detail of the shiny syrup bottles, the colorful menus, the faint smell of pancakes and coffee mixing in the air. Lucas, sitting in the booth with his phone set aside for the first time in hours, watched her closely. He felt a strange mix of relief and awe seeing her move so freely, laughing and pointing at small details that most adults would overlook. The diner felt peaceful, a bubble away from the demands of his high-powered life. He allowed himself a quiet smile, thinking he had finally given her a moment of normal childhood joy. Then it happened. Mia's tiny voice, hesitant but sincere, called out to the waitress behind the counter. Can you help me?" she asked softly, almost shyly. Lucas immediately looked up, curious about what she needed now. Emily, the young waitress with a warm smile, stepped closer. "Of course, sweetheart, what can I do for you?" she asked gently. Mia shuffled her feet, her hands clutched together as she spoke. I miss my mom. Can I have a hug?" The words hung in the air, soft yet piercing. Lucas felt his heart lurch. He had heard her mention her mother before, but never in such a public and vulnerable way. The raw honesty in her voice made him momentarily freeze. He wanted to jump up, to tell her everything would be okay, to wrap her in his arms and protect her from the ache in her own words. But before he could react, Emily knelt down to Mia's level, looking her straight in the eye. She opened her arms slowly, inviting the little girl in. Mia hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward, pressing her small body into Emily's comforting embrace. Lucas's chest tightened as he watched the scene unfold. Emily's hug was gentle, careful, and full of warmth, a small, human connection that seemed almost magical. Mia's face softened, the tension in her shoulders melting as she buried her face into Emily's shoulder. It was a moment Lucas had dreamed of giving his daughter himself, but after years of struggling to balance work and parenting, he realized he had never been able to fully offer her that kind of comfort. Seeing someone else provided for her was both heartwarming and heart-wrenching. Emily whispered softly, words Lucas couldn't hear clearly, but the tone alone was enough to soothe Mia. Lucas noticed how the waitress didn't just hug her and let go. She stayed, letting Mia relax into her embrace, offering a quiet, steady presence that only someone with real empathy could provide. Lucas had always been surrounded by people who were polite, helpful, or efficient, but genuine kindness like this was rare, especially the kind that didn't expect anything in return. Lucas's mind raced. Part of him felt guilty for not always being able to give Mia this kind of emotional security. The little girl had been asking for comfort in subtle ways for years, sometimes through a shy question, sometimes through a silent tear at bedtime, and he had tried, but his business and stress often got in the way. Seeing Mia finally feel safe enough to reach out to someone else awakened a pang of self. But alongside that guilt, there was also gratitude. Gratitude that someone could show her the warmth she needed. Someone who could help fill the space her mother's absence had left. Mia eventually pulled back slightly, her eyes still shining with relief. Emily smiled at her, brushing a stray strand of hair from her forehead. "There you go, sweetheart. Anytime you need a hug, you can always ask," she said softly. Lucas noticed the small kindness in her voice, the way she didn't rush the moment, the way she treated Mia as if she truly mattered. He realized then that for the first time in a long while, he was witnessing a genuine, human connection between his daughter and another adult, a connection that wasn't forced or transactional. Lucas took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He had been so absorbed in work and responsibilities that he had almost forgotten the power of a simple, caring gesture. Emily had reminded him, without even knowing it, of what truly mattered. He felt a shift within himself, a recognition that his daughter's happiness, her emotional health, and her sense of being loved were far more important than any business meeting or financial deal. Mia, now feeling secure, bounced back to the booth with a small laugh, clutching her napkin and bunny as if nothing had happened. Lucas could still see the lingering warmth on her face from the hug, the way her shoulders relaxed, and he felt a soft swell of hope. Hope that she could feel joy again, hope that she could trust people, and hope that life could still bring moments of comfort, even in the absence of her mother. Emily returned to her duties behind the counter, but Lucas noticed her glances toward Mia, a quiet watchfulness that was both professional and compassionate. He felt a strange sense of respect and admiration for her, someone who could give so freely of her kindness, someone who understood without needing explanations. He realized that sometimes it took an outsider to show the family what they were missing, to remind them of the importance of emotional closeness and empathy. For Lucas, the moment was more than just witnessing a hug. It was a wake-up call, a reminder of his own limitations and a gentle nudge toward reflection. He thought about his late wife and the ways she had effortlessly filled their daughter's emotional needs, something he had always struggled with despite his best intentions. Watching Emily give Mia comfort made him realize that love and warmth could come from unexpected places, and that asking for help or allowing others to step in was not a weakness. It was an act of courage and care. As he watched Emily move around the diner, checking on other customers with the same quiet attentiveness, Lucas felt a subtle shift in his perception of life. He realized that wealth and power, things he had spent so many years pursuing, could never replace genuine human connection. These small, unassuming moments, the hug, the smile, the willingness to listen, were what truly mattered, what could leave a lasting impact on his daughter's life. Mia, oblivious to the thoughts swirling in her father's mind, climbed back into her booth, her small face glowing with a newfound sense of security. She played quietly with her bunny, occasionally glancing toward Emily with a soft smile that made Lucas's chest ache with emotion. He silently thanked the young woman for giving his daughter what he sometimes could not, feeling a mix of gratitude and even humility. Lucas realized he had been given a rare opportunity to witness a moment that could shape not just Mia's day, but her sense of trust and safety in the world, and he knew, deep down, that this simple act of kindness would ripple through their lives in ways he could not yet predict. The hug had done more than comfort a child. It had opened a door, a chance for healing, connection, and perhaps even new beginnings for both Mia and himself. He leaned back in his seat, watching the two interact quietly, and allowed himself to feel something he hadn't in a long time: hope, for Mia, for himself, and for the possibility that life could still surprise them with moments of unexpected warmth and care. The morning had started as ordinary, but in that small diner, Lucas realized that something profound had happened. The way Emily had responded to Mia's innocent request for comfort was more than a gesture. It was a lesson in humanity, a reminder of what truly matters, and a spark that might just change the course of their lives. Lucas couldn't stop thinking about the moment in the diner. Emily's kindness had touched both him and Mia in ways he hadn't expected. Over the next few days, he found himself drawn back to that small, cozy place, not because of the food, but because of the warmth and sense of humanity that seemed to radiate from Emily. Mia, too, mentioned the diner often, excitedly recounting the little things she had noticed, the way Emily smiled at her, and how safe she had felt. Lucas realized that this simple connection was becoming something meaningful in both their lives. The following weekend, he decided to take Mia back. The city around them was buzzing with life, cars honking, people rushing past. But inside the diner, time seemed to move differently. It felt calm, unhurried, a stark contrast to the high-stakes pressure of boardrooms and business meetings. Lucas parked the car and watched Mia hop out eagerly, her tiny legs moving quickly toward the entrance. He followed at a slower pace, feeling a mixture of anticipation and cautious hope. He wanted to see her happy, but he also sensed that something important was unfolding, something that went beyond mere casual kindness. As soon as they walked in, Emily noticed them and waved. Her smile was genuine, warm, and welcoming, and Lucas felt a pang of relief. She approached them, kneeling slightly to greet Mia at eye level. "Hi Mia, it's so good to see you again," she said softly, her tone gentle and encouraging. Mia's face lit up instantly, and she ran toward her for another hug. Lucas watched quietly, his heart heavy with gratitude. It wasn't just a hug, it was a signal that his daughter felt safe, seen, and loved, even in someone else's care. Emily stayed in the diner that morning, chatting with Lucas quietly while keeping an attentive eye on Mia. At first, Lucas was a bit hesitant to open up. He was a man of control, used to handling business deals, not emotions. But Emily's calm, empathetic presence made it easier. He found himself speaking about his life, about losing his wife, about the struggles of trying to be both father and mother. He had never shared these thoughts with a stranger, yet something about her made him feel safe enough to be honest. Emily listened without judgment, her eyes full of understanding, occasionally nodding or offering small words of comfort. Meanwhile, Mia played quietly at a small table, building a tower of sugar packets and laughing as it wobbled and fell. Lucas glanced at her often, noticing how different she seemed here compared to home or school. She was more relaxed, freer, more herself. Emily would occasionally kneel to help her with a tricky stack or join in the laughter, never intruding, always supportive. Lucas realized that Mia was thriving in this environment, not just physically safe, but emotionally nurtured. And it was Emily who provided that space, gently, without expectation or pressure. As the morning passed, Lucas and Emily began talking more openly. She shared bits of her life, stories of growing up with a younger brother and working hard to support her family. Lucas listened, fascinated by her resilience and warmth. She wasn't just kind, she was strong, compassionate, and grounded. He admired how she could be both practical and nurturing, a balance he sometimes struggled to find in his own life. Through their conversations, Lucas felt a quiet shift in himself, a softening of the edges that stress and grief had created over the years. Over time, Lucas found himself creating excuses to return to the diner, sometimes for breakfast, sometimes for lunch, and sometimes just to spend a few minutes in conversation. Mia began to anticipate these visits eagerly, her excitement infectious. Each time they arrived, Emily greeted them with the same warmth, never treating them as special because of Lucas's wealth, but simply because she cared. Lucas noticed how natural the interactions were. There was no pretense, no judgment, only a human connection, simple and real. One day, while Mia was coloring at the table, she asked Emily to tell her a story. Emily obliged, weaving a gentle tale about kindness and courage that captivated Mia completely. Lucas watched in awe as his daughter hung on every word, her eyes shining with wonder. He realized that Emily was offering more than just kindness. She was giving Mia something rare, a model of empathy, patience, and compassion. And Lucas felt the undeniable truth. This bond could have a profound effect on his daughter's emotional growth. During one visit, a small incident occurred that further deepened their connection. A younger child in the diner knocked over a cup of juice, crying instantly. Without hesitation, Emily knelt beside the child, offering comfort and helping to clean up the mess with calm efficiency. Mia observed closely, her eyes wide. Lucas noticed the impact immediately. Mia seemed to absorb the lesson of compassion and patience without being told. Lucas realized that Emily's actions weren't just helping his daughter feel safe. They were quietly teaching her empathy, resilience, and how to respond to the world with kindness. The more time Lucas spent around Emily, the more he noticed subtle changes in himself. He began to reflect on his own behavior and approach to parenting. He realized that he had often been so focused on providing materially that he overlooked emotional needs. His daughter needed reassurance, warmth, and a model of gentle care. Emily's influence made him want to be better, to be more present, to truly listen and understand his daughter rather than just provide for her. As the weeks went by, the visits became routine, but no less meaningful. Lucas and Emily started to share small laughs, anecdotes from their pasts, and gentle observations about life. Emily never pried, but she offered perspective, quiet wisdom, and a genuine sense of understanding. Lucas began to feel that he was not only witnessing the healing of his daughter but also experiencing his own subtle healing. The walls he had built around his heart, hardened by grief and the demands of success, were slowly softening. Mia, meanwhile, thrived. She began talking about Emily constantly, sharing little moments from the diner with her friends at school and asking when they could visit again. Lucas noticed how her confidence seemed to grow, how her laughter became more frequent and her sadness less palpable. He understood, finally, that emotional connections were just as crucial as anything he could buy for her, and that Emily had become an important part of that process. One morning, Emily asked Lucas gently if he wanted to sit and enjoy breakfast with her and Mia, instead of just letting Mia play while he stayed distant. Lucas agreed, and as they ate together, he realized how rare it was to experience such unpretentious, honest company. There were no power plays, no status games, just a man, a young woman, and a little girl sharing a meal, talking and laughing. Lucas felt the weight of his world lift slightly, replaced by something he hadn't felt in years: genuine contentment. By now, Lucas understood that this wasn't just a fleeting moment or coincidence. Emily had become a quiet anchor in their lives, someone who offered comfort and guidance without expectation. She reminded him of the importance of human connection, emotional presence, and the small acts of care that shape a child's sense of security. He also began to realize that his own heart, long protected by grief and work, was slowly opening to the possibility of trust, friendship, and even love. The bond between the three of them deepened naturally, without force or pressure. Mia's joy was palpable, Emily's compassion unwavering, and Lucas's appreciation profound. It was a simple, unassuming kind of happiness, one that didn't rely on wealth, status, or grandeur. Lucas recognized that this small diner, this warm-hearted waitress, and his little daughter had created a space where they could all feel human, loved, and seen. Through these moments, Lucas came to a quiet understanding. Life's most important lessons often came from unexpected sources. In Emily's gentle attention to Mia, he saw what it truly meant to care for someone. In Mia's trusting laughter, he saw the healing power of kindness. And in himself, he saw the potential to grow not just as a father or a businessman, but as a human being capable of love, patience, and understanding. The diner visits became more than a routine. They became a lifeline. Lucas, Mia, and Emily had formed a bond that was slowly reshaping their world, opening new possibilities for trust, connection, and emotional growth. Each hug, each smile, each quiet conversation was a step toward something deeper, toward healing, toward joy, and toward a future none of them had fully imagined but were beginning to embrace wholeheartedly. The morning sun streamed through the diner windows as Lucas watched Mia carefully balance a stack of pancakes, her small fingers gripping the plate like it was the most precious thing in the world. He felt a swell of pride mixed with a quiet tension, aware that moments of joy like this were fragile and fleeting. He had come to rely on these visits as a way to reconnect with his daughter, to see her laugh and play in a space where she felt safe. Emily moved gracefully behind the counter, keeping an eye on both of them while attending to other customers, her calm presence a steadying force. Lucas couldn't help but notice how naturally Mia responded to her, how her little face lit up whenever Emily smiled or offered a gentle word. For Lucas, this morning felt slightly different. His usually precise control over every aspect of his life seemed to loosen in the warmth of the diner. But even in this sanctuary, his mind occasionally drifted to the pressures waiting outside, unfinished work, financial deals, board meetings, emails demanding immediate attention. He tried to push those thoughts aside, determined to be fully present for Mia. Yet, the weight of responsibility made his patience thinner than usual. He reminded himself that life didn't pause, and he still had obligations that demanded his focus. The tipping point came quietly, almost imperceptibly. Mia, in her excitement, knocked over a glass of orange juice, the liquid spilling across the table and dripping onto the floor. Lucas's initial reaction was a sharp exhale, frustration rising before he even realized it. He bent down quickly, grabbing a napkin to clean the mess, and muttered something under his breath about being careful. Mia's small lips trembled as she looked up at him, startled by the sudden change in his tone. Emily noticed immediately and stepped forward. "It's okay, Mia. Accidents happen," she said softly, kneeling beside the girl and gently brushing her hair back from her face. Mia instinctively leaned into Emily, seeking comfort in the same way she had before. Lucas froze, realizing that Mia's first instinct was not to come to him but to Emily. A mixture of guilt and awe washed over him. His daughter had experienced his frustration, his impatience, and yet, she still sought refuge in the warmth of someone else's care. The scene struck Lucas profoundly. He had prided himself on being the provider, the protector, the person who could shield his daughter from the hardships of life. But in that moment, he realized that provision alone was not enough. Mia needed emotional security, steady reassurance, and the kind of understanding that he had sometimes struggled to give. Emily's quiet presence reminded him of the nurturing he wanted to offer but often found elusive in the whirlwind of his career. Lucas stepped back slightly, allowing Emily to comfort Mia. He felt a strange vulnerability, a rare admission that he couldn't always be the source of his daughter's emotional strength. Emily's gentle words and calming actions seemed to ease Mia's fears almost instantly. She whispered something to Mia, soft and encouraging, and the little girl's tears began to fade. Lucas watched closely, taking in every detail, the tilt of Emily's head, the softness in her eyes, the way she held herself steady yet inviting. It was a display of empathy so natural and powerful that Lucas felt a stirring in his chest, a mixture of admiration, humility, and longing. As Mia calmed down, Lucas noticed the way Emily subtly guided him as well. She gestured toward a chair, suggesting he take a moment to breathe and step away from the intensity of the scene. He followed instinctively, sitting near the window and watching as Mia regained her composure, her small laughter returning like sunlight breaking through clouds. Emily's influence was quiet but undeniable. She had a way of teaching, through example and gentle intervention, that Lucas found both humbling and enlightening. In the midst of this ordinary chaos, Lucas reflected on the past 2 years of his life. Raising Mia without her mother had been a challenge he could never fully prepare for. There were days when he felt like he was failing, days when the grief and stress consumed him, leaving little room for patience or emotional connection. He had tried to compensate with gifts, experiences, and lavish attention, but he realized now that what Mia truly needed wasn't grandeur, it was presence, understanding, and emotional guidance. Emily had shown him, in the simplest and most profound way, how to provide that. After the spill was cleaned up and Mia resumed her playful energy, Lucas took a deep breath and approached her. He knelt down to her level, gently brushing a hand along her shoulder. "I'm sorry I got frustrated, Mia. I should have been more patient," he said quietly. Mia looked up at him, her eyes still wide but trusting, and nodded. Emily smiled softly from across the room, her expression encouraging without being intrusive. Lucas felt a wave of relief. The moment had passed, but the lesson lingered. Empathy, patience, and gentle guidance were not weaknesses, they were the tools of real care. Emily continued to check in on both of them, offering small words of encouragement and warmth that Lucas noticed more acutely than ever. Her presence had shifted the dynamic in subtle but important ways. Mia's laughter was more frequent, her confidence growing in tiny but noticeable increments, and Lucas himself felt lighter, as though a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying had been lifted slightly by witnessing and participating in this environment of calm care. Later, as they sat finishing their meal, Lucas found himself speaking more openly with Emily. He shared memories of his wife, stories of Mia's earliest days, and the challenges he faced as a single parent. Emily listened attentively, never interrupting, never judging, her responses thoughtful and compassionate. She offered advice when appropriate, gently guiding him to consider his daughter's perspective and emotional needs. Lucas felt a sense of camaraderie he had not experienced in years, a partnership in care that went beyond mere friendship. Through the day, Lucas began to see the ripple effect of Emily's influence. Mia was calmer, more expressive, and more willing to explore her own feelings. Lucas himself became more reflective, thinking carefully about how he reacted to small challenges, how he communicated with his daughter, and how he could foster a nurturing environment both inside and outside the diner. Emily's presence had illuminated gaps in his parenting approach, not in a critical way, but as a mirror showing him what was possible with patience, empathy, and care. By the time they left the diner, Lucas's perspective had shifted significantly. He realized that the world he inhabited, one of wealth, power, and constant pressure, was not the ultimate measure of his life's value. What mattered most was the emotional well-being of Mia, the nurturing connections she formed, and the lessons of kindness and empathy she absorbed along the way. Emily had become an integral part of that journey, a guiding presence who was helping both father and daughter navigate the complexities of grief, love, and trust. As they drove home, Lucas watched Mia happily recount the morning's events, her small voice filled with excitement and joy. He felt a profound sense of gratitude for Emily, for her intuition, her patience, and her quiet but powerful influence. He understood that life could shift in the most unexpected ways, that a simple act of kindness could ripple outward to transform not only a child's day, but also the parent's heart. Lucas knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. Emily had become more than a friendly face in a diner. She was a catalyst for change, a reminder that love and care could take forms beyond what he had imagined. And as he glanced at Mia in the rearview mirror, her laughter echoing in the car, he realized that the world had just opened a new door, one where healing, growth, and the possibility of deeper connections awaited both of them. By the end of the day, Lucas felt something he hadn't in years: hope. Hope that Mia could thrive emotionally, hope that he could be the father she needed, and hope that life still had the capacity for unexpected, transformative moments. Emily's simple, steadfast kindness had shifted something profound in their lives, and Lucas knew it would continue to shape their journey in ways he could only begin to imagine. Lucas had been quietly observing Mia over the past weeks, noticing subtle changes that warmed his heart. She laughed more freely, played with more confidence, and even spoke openly about her feelings in ways he hadn't seen since her mother's passing. The once quiet, slightly withdrawn little girl was blossoming in a way that filled Lucas with awe. He knew that Emily had played a crucial role in this transformation. Her consistent warmth, patience, and gentle guidance had provided Mia with something he sometimes struggled to offer: emotional security. And as much as he valued her influence on his daughter, Lucas couldn't ignore the quiet pull he felt toward Emily herself, a mix of gratitude, admiration, and something more tender that he hadn't allowed himself to acknowledge before. One afternoon, Lucas decided to invite Emily and Mia to a charity event he was sponsoring. It wasn't an extravagant gala. It was a small, community-focused event that aligned with Emily's values and the kind of environment where Mia could feel comfortable. Emily accepted with a soft smile, and Lucas felt a small thrill of anticipation. He wasn't just inviting her as a guest, he was inviting her into a part of his world that was usually reserved for business associates and family. This felt like a step toward integrating the people who mattered most to him, a move he hadn't had the courage to make before. When the day of the event arrived, Mia was practically bouncing with excitement. She had been counting down the days, eager to show Emily her new dress and introduce her to a part of her father's world. Lucas watched as Emily knelt to adjust Mia's bow, laughing softly with it. The interaction was effortless, warm, and filled with a natural ease that Lucas admired. He realized that their relationship had grown beyond simple kindness. It had become a genuine bond that impacted both his daughter and himself. At the event, Emily immediately drew Mia in with gentle attention, helping her explore the booths, pointing out animals, and asking questions that encouraged curiosity and wonder. Lucas noticed how Mia gravitated toward her, how her eyes sparkled with trust and happiness. Emily had a way of blending into Lucas's world without overshadowing it, creating a safe space for Mia while quietly reminding Lucas of the importance of presence, empathy, and emotional engagement. He realized that he had spent years defining success in terms of money, power, and prestige, but these moments, the laughter, the trust, the joy, were what truly defined a meaningful life. Throughout the afternoon, Lucas found himself conversing more with Emily than with any of the business acquaintances present. He listened as she shared insights from her own life, her stories of perseverance, and her reflections on empathy and human connection. Lucas felt increasingly drawn to her, not just as the kind woman who had comforted his daughter, but as someone who understood the deeper challenges of life and had the ability to navigate them with grace and authenticity. He realized that for the first time in years, he could relax and be himself around another adult, sharing his thoughts and feelings without pretense. Mia, meanwhile, seemed more confident than ever. She asked Emily for help with games, ran toward her for small hugs, and smiled with abandon in ways that made Lucas's heart ache with emotion. Watching them, he recognized the profound impact of Emily's consistent kindness. It wasn't simply that she made Mia happy. She was teaching her, through example, how to trust, how to seek comfort, and how to feel safe expressing herself. Lucas felt a deep gratitude for the subtle yet powerful influence she had on his daughter's emotional development. As the evening progressed, Lucas realized that the bond he shared with Emily was shifting as well. He found himself leaning toward her, seeking her perspective, valuing her opinions, and noticing the gentleness in her eyes that mirrored the care she had shown Mia. The warmth between them was undeniable, a quiet but growing connection that neither of them rushed nor forced. Lucas felt his heart opening in ways he hadn't allowed for years. Recognizing that love and partnership could exist outside the confines of business and status. At one point, Mia wandered off briefly to play with another child, and Lucas and Emily found themselves standing together near the refreshments table. There was a comfortable silence between them, punctuated only by the soft sounds of laughter and conversation from the event. Lucas felt an unusual vulnerability, a willingness to share more of himself than he had with anyone in a long time. "Thank you," he said quietly, almost reverently. "For her, and for me, I didn't realize how much we needed someone like you until now." Emily looked at him, her eyes reflecting both warmth and understanding. "You've done an amazing job with her," she replied softly. "She feels safe, and she knows she can trust you. But sometimes, even the strongest people need a little help. That's not failing, it's caring." Her words struck Lucas deeply. They weren't just comforting, they were liberating. He realized that letting someone into their lives, trusting them with his daughter, and even allowing himself to be emotionally vulnerable was not a weakness, it was a strength. When Mia returned, the three of them continued exploring the event together, their laughter and easy conversation drawing smiles from nearby guests. Lucas watched Mia's joy unfold, a mix of pride, relief, and awe washing over him. He understood, more clearly than ever, that this bond they were forming was not temporary. Emily was becoming an integral part of their lives, not replacing anyone, but filling gaps they hadn't been able to navigate alone. The warmth and trust she offered was creating a safe and joyful environment where Mia could grow, and where Lucas could rediscover a softer, more present side of himself. By the time the event ended, the sun had begun to set, casting golden light across the courtyard. Lucas walked alongside Emily and Mia, feeling a quiet contentment he hadn't known in years. Mia held both of their hands, skipping ahead, laughing, and chattering about her favorite parts of the day. Lucas realized that this simple connection, the friendship, trust, and care they had cultivated was transforming their world. It wasn't about wealth, power, or status. It was about love, presence, and the courage to let people into their lives. As they drove home, Lucas glanced at Emily in the passenger seat, her eyes warm and thoughtful, and he felt a sense of clarity. She wasn't just a friend or a helper. She was someone who had become part of their family in ways both subtle and profound. He could feel the shift in his own heart, a softening that allowed him to imagine a future where he didn't have to shoulder every burden alone, where Mia could experience the joy of emotional security, and where he could embrace the possibility of love again. When they arrived home, Mia ran ahead, her excitement still bubbling, and Lucas followed with a sense of quiet happiness. He knew that life would continue to present challenges, grief, and responsibilities, but he also understood that they had discovered something far more enduring: connection, trust, and hope. Emily had shown them that human kindness could heal, that love could enter life unexpectedly, and that embracing support did not diminish strength, it enhanced it. That night, as Lucas tucked Mia into bed, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. He kissed her forehead gently and whispered, "You are loved, Mia, always." And for the first time in a long time, he believed it, not just for her, but for himself as well. He realized that life had shifted in ways he hadn't expected, that a simple act of kindness, a hug, and the presence of someone genuine could change the course of their lives entirely. In the quiet of his own room later, Lucas reflected on everything that had happened. Emily's presence had brought joy to Mia, clarity to himself, and hope for the future. He understood that this was just the beginning, a life filled with laughter, trust, and love that would continue to grow. He felt a rare sense of peace, a certainty that their little trio had found something precious, a bond that could weather challenges, grief, and uncertainty, a bond built on care, understanding, and the courage to open their hearts again. Lucas knew that no matter what the future held, they had already experienced a life-changing moment, a moment that began with a small hug in a diner, grew through shared kindness and understanding, and now blossomed into a connection that could shape the rest of their lives. For Mia, it meant security, love, and joy. For Lucas, it meant healing, hope, and the possibility of love. And for Emily, it meant being part of something profound, a quiet influence that had transformed to lives forever. As they drifted to sleep that night, Lucas felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel for years. Hope. Hope that life could still bring happiness in unexpected forms. Hope that Mia would grow up with love surrounding her. And hope that he could embrace life fully again, without fear or reservation. The world had shifted, and he knew that together, the three of them could navigate it with strength, love, and an unshakable bond that began with a simple, heartfelt hug.